Hello and welcome to my micro school. This is episode number, I believe, 19. I'm very excited. Today we're going to talk about the math behind stock. Everyone talks about stock. Today we're going to just do like the basics of stocks. I'm going to teach you like the concepts, but let's just start first with the PJ Max. So how do we get to have stock or issue stock if you're a corporation? So you have the PJ Max, right? And they have a common goal, which is what? Fighting crime by night with their pajamas. So the PJ Max get together and they're like, you know what? We need to raise money. We need to raise funds because we can just not be fighting, without a car or anything like that. So they go ahead and they build a corporation. They call it the PJ Max Enterprise, right? And then they go ahead and with their own savings, they buy a catboy car where they all fit. Nice. They fight crime in Paris. Everyone is so happy with the PJ Mask. And then one day, they're sitting, drinking their coffee, and they're like, guys, but, they talk to each other like, what about if we could have more money? An outlet can have like a flying car, and then Gecko could have a really cool bike. How do we raise money for that? Well, now they have a corporation and the PJ Mask, they need money to get assets. When I say assets, they want things so they can fight crime. And, maybe they get a tax break from the city of Paris. I'm not sure how they get compensated, but basically they need to raise money to, get all these gadgets. So Gecko says, wait, guys, what about if we sell or we issue stock? And the PJ Masks go, yeah, that's a great idea. So the PJ Masks, they basically get together, they put all the documentation together, and they start issuing stocks. And bingo, people in Paris go crazy with the IPO, initial price offering. They want more of the PJ Max. The PJ Max gets so successful by selling stock, which we're going to talk about it, that they go ahead and they're able to buy the really nice car for Gecko and the really nice car for Outlet. This is what stock is for. Companies use stock to raise funds. Can companies use something else other than stock? Yes, and we're going to talk about bonds and loans in another episode. So today we're just going to talk about stocks. But yes, the way how corporations raise money is either they sell equity or, with stock. And this is basically the definition of stock. I got this from Investopedia.com. I love the website and I highly recommend that website. I feel it's a website that has everything in one place. It does have advertisement, but I'm going to tell you, have used it as a guidance, highly recommend it. So this is the definition. It's basically you, the stockholder, owns a share in the company. Now, let me make sure that I understand this about share. When you buy a share, let's say that you buy a share for Apple, right? And we're going to talk about Apple. We're going to do an analysis for Apple right now so you can know how to read stock on the financial Yahoo chart or any financial chart. Basically, what happens? This is not like you own the corporation. I cannot go and say, oh, I have this many stocks. I'm going to take this share. It doesn't work like that. So this is the definition. It's a form of security that indicates the holder has proportionally ownership in the issuing corporation. So basically, what do you get when you get stocks? Well, when you get stock, you get a share, right? The more shares you have, the more power you have, because as a shareholder, you have two types of shareholders. You can be a preferred shareholder or you can be a common shareholder. Now, there's a difference. When you're a preferred shareholder, you don't have the right to vote, and basically you're kind of like an investor in the background. However, if the company goes bankrupt, you're one of the first ones that get paid. But if you're a common shareholder, which that's what the word common comes from, if the company goes bankrupt, that's it. You're done. That's the reason why stocks are so risky. And this is the reason why people worry so much about stock, because stocks basically are affected from our environment. As you can see in the pandemic, all what you hear is like the stock market, the stock market. So we need to remember that if you live in United States, this is a country that is based on stocks. Corporation basically is beautiful. This is the beauty of capitalism. And yes, capitalism, like anything, has good and bad things. But I feel like stocks is, if you know what you're doing and you have the opportunity of have a free market where you have companies that you feel they're good to invest, Apple, Amazon, whatever, we're going to talk about those companies, then yes, you have the opportunity of supporting those companies like the PJ Masks and making money, just like you might have the opportunity of losing that money. So let's talk about the two different terms: authorized shares and outstanding shares. So let's define authorized shares. It's the maximum number of shares a company is allowed to issue. So when the PJ Masks were trying to sell their stock, you know, they were very careful because they don't want to give up the power, right? I don't know, a villain can come, maybe Luna Girl, and she buys too many shares, and what happens? And she takes control. So this is the reason why you have authorized shares and then you have outstanding shares. Outstanding shares, let me say that again, outstanding shares, I'm trying to improve my pronunciation, are the number of shares held by the current shareholders. So we'll go, anytime I tell you about shares, outstanding shares, I need you to remember that this is the number of shares held by the current shareholders. Now, let's start with the two most important ratios that when you read stock, you should understand. Now, when you study finance and when you studied this beautiful, which I encourage anyone, if you don't know what to do and you feel that you like reading and analyzing numbers, finance is for you, because this is a beautiful degree that gives you all the skills to basically, it's a lot of skills that you can use, you know, in your regular life. So one question that a student asked me, do I need to have all of this knowledge to be rich? And I said, well, yes, you can, and yes, you cannot become rich. However, going to school, understanding this will help you determine what's the best or the worst stock. But at the end of the day, I'm actually taking right now certification on, I forgot the name of it, but I will do a podcast about that. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we understand no one makes money only buying stocks. A portfolio, and when you diversify, and when they say like don't put your eggs in one basket, is because you want to diversify. You want to make sure that when you're doing stocks, you not only do stocks, or if you do stocks, which we're going to talk about in another podcast, you want to make sure they're not correlated and so on. But we'll get to that in another podcast when we talk about completely about stocks. Today, I just want to show you the general math about stocks. So let's talk about the first ratio that you should watch. So this is the thing. When you want to know how the market is doing and all that, you can actually just Google Yahoo Financial, or there are other websites. I don't know. I always use Yahoo Finance because I guess I'm an older person. But there are other, this is like a free website where you can go, you look for the stock, and then it gives you all the information. So look at the screen right now. And we're going to talk about the importance things that we need to look when trying to determine if a stock is good or is not the best. So as you can see here in the screen, we have here Apple. Notice here that you have NASDAQ. I don't know if I spell it correct, if I say it correctly. I always read it, but I never pronounce that. And let me just tell you the acronym of NASDAQ. Is the National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotations. Yes, that's basically what it is. A lot of things with technology are going to go with NASDAQ. Now, what do I look when I look at this screen? Look at this. Apple basically has the share, which is $118.03. You can see here that the previous close was 119.39. Now remember that the stock changes constantly. So by the time it closes, that's this number that you have right here. I can see that it opened at 118.61. And then in the 52-week range, the stock, look at this, went from 53.50 cents to 137.98. We can see how the pandemic has affected this, the stocks, because going to $53 to 137 is a lot. So now from here, the numbers that you have to check are the following. Let me show you what is beta. We will talk about beta in another podcast, but beta basically measures the market risk. And the rule when you learn about beta is that if you have a beta close to 1, beta basically is kind of like seeing how volatile the stock is, right? So if you have a beta equals to 1, you are like pair to pair, you're kind of like with the market. The higher your beta, most likely you are more like I don't want to say like riskier company, but yes, you're actually above the market. If you are less than 1, then you are not so risky. Now, this doesn't really indicate anything because you have to do a deeper analysis, and we don't go by the beta, right? We look at the PE ratio. Let's talk about the PE ratio and what this stands for. Okay. The PE ratio is the price per earnings ratio. Exactly what it says, and you can see the formula, is the price of the stock divided by the earnings per share. So for example, if the price of your stock is $100 and your earnings per share is $5, then your PE ratio is going to be $20. Notice that the PE ratio is 35.98. Now, what does the TTM stands for, which is next to it? It stands for trailing 12 months. It's just a label. The PE ratio is an indication how the company is basically, they call it also the earnings multiple, because it kind of shows you how you can compare with the PE ratio how the company is doing when you use so where do you go? So let's say that you have here 35.98, right? And you're like, okay, is that good? Is that bad? I mean, obviously this is Apple and you're going to be like, whatever, Apple is Apple, I'm going to buy it. But you have to be careful with this because the PE ratio gives you a lot of information about the company. So, but is 35 good? Is 35 bad? How do I check this? Well, this is why we have the S&P 500 index, which stands for the Standard & Poor 500. Basically, investors use this as a benchmark for the overall market. So if I see, and I'm going to talk about how this company works, but if I see like a 35.98, I can say like, okay, let me go to the S&P 500 and let me see how the market in general is doing. So this is like a good, benchmark. Now, the S&P Poor 500, and I'm putting here in the screen how it looks like, the graph, basically is going to, what they do is that they grab all of these corporations, right? And they put it in this pool, and that's how they get this data of what they call the index. Now, 28% of the index market's value actually relies on the top 10 companies. Well, let me tell you who are the top 10 companies. Number 1, Apple. And here you can see what I'm showing in the screen. This is from investopedia.com, which, like I said, very relevant, very easy to do, and all their little videos are very helpful. So I'm going to put all of these links below. So look at this. You have Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Alphabet, which this is the parent of Google. Then you have Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, hopefully I said that correctly, Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson probably will go up after this vaccine situation. Procter & Gamble, and so on. So you can see that the S&P 500 is going to give you like basically like an index. So let me just show you an example. There's an example that they show in Wikipedia. In Investopedia. So we talk about the PE ratio before, right? We say, okay, if the price of the stock is 100 and the earnings per share is 5, my PE ratio is $20. If I go to the S&P 500 and I see that my index is 23, then I can say, not 100%, but I can say, wow, you know what? 23 is the market and my PE is 20. Maybe this stock is not evaluated correctly. Now, making decisions about stocks is not that easy. Stocks are influenced by a lot of factors, including news. For example, the day Steve Jobs passed away, the stock market for Apple, obviously people felt, like, oh my God, if this guy dies, the value of the company is not going to keep up. So you can see how then you buy stocks. So I just want to show you, I got $30 during the pandemic. And this is where it is today, $34.34. Incredible because I have seen the stock going. So I have seen this number. Remember, I initially bought like $30 worth of stock, right? And I bought Coca-Cola. I bought basically McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Disney, the ones that they had available here. I think this is a great tool to start teaching people, in a really easy way to do the stock and understand. But what I want to tell you with this is that when you read this financials Yahoo, when people talk about stock, no one knows really. There are many factors. No one can tell you, oh, you should invest in Apple because, it's Apple. No, Apple has its ups and downs. And sometimes this is just like buying clothing. At the end of the day, your goal is what? Buying low, sell high. And you want to buy something that is going to be good in the short and in the long term. Let's talk about the earnings per share. Now, the earnings per share, this is used to track the company performance. Let's remember that the PE ratio, we need the earnings per share because the PE ratio is the price of the stocks divided by the earnings per share. So the PE ratio is the most common ratio and the ratio that, kind of like gets everything together for the investors. But there's more than this. What do I want you to, why was the reason that I did this podcast, and why do I want to keep talking about the math about, stock? I will do more instructional videos on this, and I'm putting a bunch of links of the instructional videos that I have done for my students, that this is what you do when you're doing your master's or when you're doing anything that has to do with finance. And this is beautiful. The stock market is purely math. There are many algorithms working constantly, trying to figure out what is risk, what is reward, risk, reward, risk, reward, risk, reward. So this is what the stock market is about. Can you become a millionaire with the stock market? I think you could, but you really need to know what you're doing. This is a full-time job. And I feel that the best way to learn, in my experience, is kind of like getting maybe like a certification. I'm actually getting a certification for Coursera.com, which I'm going to put there. And let me tell you, so I think it's a $50. You start for free, but at the end, you have to pay if you finish the class, which, but you have access to like Harvard University, Yale University. Like I was taking this class with this, I'm going to put it on the screen because I forgot his name. He won a Nobel Prize in economics. And let me tell you, the app is so easy and it's nice. And the people that they have put in these classes are professors or are scholars that I don't think I could ever have the money or the time to approach them that close to give me a class about stocks. I highly recommend it. For kids, this is very important to start learning, understanding stocks, because we're getting into the future where everything is going to be electronically traded, where everything is going to be basically a stock market, a little stock market here, a little stock market there. So we need to understand, do you know what you're doing? Because remember, at the end of the day, unfortunately, when you have things like Enron corporations destroying the life of millions of people, just because, a bunch of people just go greedy, it just makes, at least that makes me very sad and sick. I hope, hopefully you feel the same way. But the more informed we are as stockholders, the more you know about it. the better. Knowledge is power. I want to thank you so much. This was a short, a small podcast today because I think that this is a concept that I'm going to be developing a little bit more, and very excited about this project. I'm going to be doing the math behind labels, the math behind everything, because there's math everywhere. I hope you enjoy it. The next episode that I would like to do will be the math behind bonds. So that way we have the stocks, then we have the bonds. And then from there, I'm going to talk about in my future podcast. And if you enjoy this podcast, I'm going to talk about the security market line, the methods, the people that basically build the math for stocks. And they never talk about this in school, but you can learn it here in my micro school. Thank you so much.